Blessings. Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. So it's about to begin. And I have some things that I want to share with you. And I'm a little disorganized. All right. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little disorganized. The more you know me, the more you understand. I'm a little disorganized. So, just so that you can see, I don't have I don't have all the things that I need to have uh, to do this on the video as I do the video. I don't have all the editing stuff yet. I will. I'll get that. But I am Azariah in Israel, and ministry is Hataba Tallahassee. That means the Ark in Tallahassee. Wherever you are, be the Ark. Bringing people to safety and salvation. I have something I want to share with you today. My thoughts are in Devarim chapter 30. That would be for those still using their English Bibles. Deuteronomy chapter 30, and again, my mind is going to a passage in Jeremiah, which is Jeremiah, as you will call him. But I'm going to leave that alone for right now. But I have a word for you today, and in that word, I have some words that perhaps one word in particular that I think is really, really, really important. Let me preface this by saying that I am not interested in the salvation of the black people or the salvation of the white people or Chinese people. I'm a witness. I'm a light. I'm just a messenger giving you the word of Yahuwah, the word of our Creator, and it is for all people. So when I speak of things, don't think that I'm speaking to black people only, or I'm speaking to non Christians, or I'm speaking to Christians. I'm speaking to everybody, myself included. I am going to speak some things against the history that we've been given, we've been taught, because it affects how we live today, and it affects how we worship and relate to Yahuwah, our Creator, the Creator of the whole universe. Do not begrudge a brother ice water polar pop. Yea, verily, I needed it. So, this is the word. I hope you can read this. I don't think you can. Maybe you can. It's, and it looks backwards. It's ANUSYM. Right? The ANUSYM. That would be best translated the right ones. It's a Hebrew word meaning the right ones. ANUSY or IM. ANUSYM. That particular word refers to people forced out of true worship, worship as it had been passed on from the fathers, from Moshe, and all the way through to the time of the Babylonian captivity, which took place around 605 BC. The northern tribes, the 10 northern tribes, went into captivity in around 722 BC. But those are not the only two significant captivities that we have to deal with. I just turned the camera into a light where it wouldn't make you see me, so I'm gonna turn it back. Okay. So what happens is, through much rigor and it was so much hardship, particularly in the early years of the Babylonian captivity. It was a struggle to hold on to the language, to the worship, to the Torah. You know, it was a very difficult place to be worshiping Yahuwah. They were picked on because everyone's name seemed to end in Yahoo, so they called them the Yahoos. It was important they held on to that name because they wanted to be identified with the Creator. And his name, he gave his name is Yahweh, Yahuwah. So they gave him, they held on to the name. And of course, the many people that were in the Babylonian culture and the Babylonian Empire and the Persian Empire that followed it, uh, you know, they these people stood out, so everyone else sort of poked fun at them, just like you know we people poke fun at Chinese people and let a Chinese person move into a black neighborhood, you know. Somebody comes in speaking with an odd accent. There were situations where I went to school in a place where there was no other black people, and people knew me as Al the black guy. What was I gonna say? You know what I mean? I tried to explain to them I'm actually brown. You know, but anyway, but so here you have these people. They're in this land and they are tempted with every kind of worship, every kind of popular uh, uh, God and deity, and all these objects of worship, and all these languages, and all these things, and so they have to watch what they eat because it's something sacrificed to a demon or some deity. They didn't want to touch that. And they need to know that their food was handled properly and that it was indeed what it was supposed to be. So they went and bought a piece of lamb. They weren't getting a piece of dog, you know. So they had all those issues to deal with, and of course, you know, the women were tempted by the pretty things, and you know, and guys running around half naked, and the guys were interested in pretty things also that were running around half naked, you know, and then they had the other things that just in life tempts us. Um, um, uh, I have a hard time driving by a Dodge dealership and seeing the big Ram trucks, you know what I mean? Big Ram trucks, you know, and and I'm driving a little Ford, you know, and so these are type of things that pull us away from true worship, even in our society. You know, I love seeing the beautiful guitars and keyboards, and you know, I want to have all that stuff, and nice suits. I love a nice Italian suit. I just don't love the price tag, you know, but that they and really good shoes. Anyone know what really good shoes feel like? Don't any of you women answer because I see what y'all wear. I know they ain't comfortable, but uh, those things are things that you know we if you let it you'll run after them. Power, position, all those things that they had in their society. In their society, we have those things in our society too, and so they pull us away from where we're supposed to be. But the people realized that their brothers had lost their identity and they were truly lost. Listen, you can be lost in the woods but still know who you are and where you came from. And that might help you get back home. But even if you die in the woods, you won't be as lost as someone who's not only lost their way in the woods, but they don't know where they're from. They don't know their true language. They don't know their true culture. They are beyond physically lost. They are spiritually and psychologically and culturally lost. This is something we should be able to relate to. It's hard. It's a hard thing. I want to show you something. Listen, I'm not an artist. I'm going to make some real charts and eventually, but it won't be right away. I want to give you an idea of something that happened. I'm going to read a, a passage of scripture to you real quick also, if my fan doesn't blow everything away. I'm not going to read the whole passage, the whole chapter. I want you to study very, very carefully um, uh, Deut 28 and 29 and focus on chapter 30. That's Deuteronomy chapter 28, 29. But focus on chapter 30. He hits you with something in chapter 30 after he tells you about all the barakah, that's the blessings, and about all the curses. And then he says something very profound. I want you to get it, what he's saying. I'm actually going to start in verse 29 of chapter 29. The hidden belongs to Yahuwah our Elohim, but what is revealed belongs to us and to our children forever, to do all the words of this Torah. Now that word Torah is important. All right, it's very important. It can be translated law because it does contain law, but overall it means instruction. All right, these are the instructions. When we say right rulings, we're talking about instructions. This is what he's weighed out. This is what's best for us. He didn't give us this Torah for him to walk by. He gave us this Torah for us to walk by and for all people to walk by and to follow. I can't make it any plainer than that. These are his instructions. These are instructions to live when he says that you shall not kill, and you shall not steal, and you shall not bear false witness, and you shall do all these. He gives you instruction. Honor your father and mother. He gives you instruction. Guard carefully. Keep the Shabbat. This is an instruction. This is how you live. This isn't simply, well, this is I'm writing some rules down for you. No, this is how you live. He's given us much better than laws, much better than rules. He's given us the instructions on how to live and how to know him and how to be a part of his true creation, of his true people, how to be his children, how to be his followers. Now, listen what he says in verse 1 of chapter 30. And it shall be when all these words come upon you. He's talking about the blessings as well as the curses, the barakah as well as the curses. The barakah and the curse which I have put before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among all the Gentiles where Yahuwah your Elohim drives you, and shall turn back to Yahuwah your Elohim, and obey his voice according to all that I commanded you today, with all your heart and with all your being, you and your children. Then Yahuwah your Elohim shall turn back your captivity, and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you from all the peoples where Yahuwah your Elohim has scattered you. If any of you are driven out to the farthest parts under the Shamayim, from there Yahuwah your Elohim gathers you, and from there he takes you. The farthest parts of the Shamayim, the farthest parts of the earth, wherever he's driven you, wherever you've been taken, he's bringing you back. When you turn your heart back to him and you begin to walk in his ways, he says he'll bring you back. He'll have compassion on you. He'll have compassion on me. He'll have compassion on our people. in this took place in many captivities and throughout the scripture. Just you read and you see where the people have been forced out of the land early. Where they were oppressed, and here finally in uh, later years, there Yeshayahu, who was Isaiah, and Jeremiah, who speak of there, and among other uh, Nabi uh, prophets, uh, speak of the captivity, particularly of the northern kingdom, who had not only worshiped other deities, but they had twisted the true worship, made their own temple, and they decided they were going to do their own thing, and they were still going to call on Yahuwah, but they were going to do it their way, not His way. It's funny how we seem to do that now. We want to have our worship, these churches that have their worship on Sunday and not on the Sabbath. They decide their own Sabbath. They make their own Sabbath. Well, my goodness, I can imagine when I was growing up. I told my parents, well, I'm gonna have my own bedtime. I'll decide when I want to eat dinner. I'll make my own rules. I'll do things my way. I'm an individual, so I'm gonna do things my way. I wish I had the nerve to tell Arthur Hollis that, or Hannah Hollis, that I was just gonna do it my way. I tried, and I found out that the leather on their belt was tougher than the leather on my behind. So after a while, you give up. Uh, they were merciful. They had every right to knock my brains out, and it didn't work. So it didn't work with my parents. There's a reason why we have parents. There's a reason why we're told to honor them. That teaches us how to honor Yahuwah. He says, I would drive you out. In the captivity, the Babylonian captivity, a lot of people, it took a long time for the people to come back into the land. Some of the people came back and they came back in small ways with Ezra and the other prophets, Nehemiah. And they come back in waves. Eventually, they've returned to the land. Some of them never came back. Some of them stayed where they were at, which is interesting, but not very well known. You're not told that in history. You're not told that about those people who were scattered throughout Africa and the Middle East, even as far as the Far East. Some turned and traveled north from there. But that's where they were at. When after this captivity, after the Persian Empire, comes the Greek Empire, and then you have more people who were scattered, particularly down into Africa. The Jews were forced into Africa and into Egypt. They really weren't welcome very much in Egypt, so they continued down into Ethiopia and stayed there. So I mentioned in one of my previous videos about Antiochus Epiphanes coming in, his capturing of the city, and how people were driven out, and they just did not return. They did not return. They traveled down into Africa and North Africa and down into southern part, central part of Africa, and spread out across. After and that's why you see in Acts chapter 2, you see people from all over. These aren't all, they weren't all Hebrews, they weren't all Jews. Some of these people were people who just under knew the scriptures and came at a time. Also, the world, they knew that this was a time where there was a lot of festival there and a lot of people there, so they came to do trade. Where Jerusalem was at was a prime place to do this, so people converged on Jerusalem. But they were, if you read in there, you see there are people from all over the globe. After 70 A.D., the Romans sacked Jerusalem, Judea, and once again, the people are forced out. Well, some are thrown into slavery and carried to different parts of the globe. A lot of them had the wisdom to flee, and they headed again. Where's the safest place? They headed down into Africa. This is important because history doesn't tell you that. You have to look for it. This is one of the things that just aren't obvious. You have to go and find it. And if you look, you will find this truth. So, following this, a lot of things took place that Jerusalem was the focus of a lot of false religious activity. People from around the globe were trying to capture Jerusalem, take Jerusalem. So when we have this weird religion that comes up called Christianity, it wasn't true worship. There were true worshipers, don't get me wrong. There are people who, even in Rome and Roman Empire and all the way as far as Britain, who were true worshipers. You know, they were always far as what's now Russia and China, and particularly in Africa, who were true worshipers, who truly worshiped Yahuwah, who truly knew Yeshua HaMashiach, the true worshipers. But there was also those who decided, we can't beat them, we might as well join them. And to unite the kingdom, the empire, under himself, this emperor named Constantine, who was a sun worshiper, adopted this Christian faith that they formulated. And they took all these characters in that as if reading the knowledge of all these characters and gave the names of their deities to some of these characters and gave the positions of these deities to these characters and called them saints and decided on the day of worship and made it law. Isn't that funny? They made it law. And so that you had to worship on this, and then we ended up with the same issue of the ANUSYM. Let me get back to that word, and I'll tell you what it means. The ANUSYM were those who, for one reason or another, couldn't just take off and hide. So what they did was they forced them to denounce their faith in Yeshua and exchange it for this priest, or who we now call Jesus Christ. Well, we know Jesus Christ is not his name. He wasn't some Greek being, nor was he the son of Zeus. He's the son of Elohim, not the son of Zeus. So he couldn't be Jesus. Jesus is not who Yahushua is. So they fall under this, and at the expense of their lives, some stood their ground, watched their children and wives slaughtered, and then themselves to die. And this was a great deterrent. This was hard. I don't know how I would, what I would have thought of of it at that time, I would have taken the stand. But how would we do that today? What if they came and threatened your life and the life of your children? Would you still stand? It's a very poignant question, very important question, very difficult one to answer. What makes it worse is I truly believe that it'll come down to a time when it won't be unbelievers who attack us, but it'll be those who demand that we worship on this Sunday instead of on the day of Yahuwah, Shabbat. It'll be keeping their law versus keeping the Torah. And we will stand and watch our wives and children slaughtered. We'll stand and watch our children turned against us. How will we stand? That's very, very important. ANUSYM were the ones who were forced to denounce Yahweh, forced to denounce Yeshua HaMashiach, forced to disobey the Torah, forced to not keep the Shabbat, and their children were forced, even though they were ignorant, they didn't know a whole lot better, so they were taken away as little children, but they were raped of their culture and of their history, and they were taught something different. And it's rape indeed. Then these crusades that went on, followed by many things in the Middle Ages, the Inquisition. The Inquisition was where the Catholic Roman Catholic Church purged all the world that they knew of anything Hebrew. They wanted you to follow their Greek religion, their Roman religion. They want you to if you did not worship Jesus on Sunday, they were going to kill you. They were going to wipe you out. They were going to punish you severely, take your property and your land, take your family from you. So they did this. At the same time, the Muslim religion had grown, and they did the same thing. You either converted or you died, and it was very strange. It was all this whole thing. If you look in your encyclopedias and go online and search, you'll see how they did this. They burned writings in Hebrew. That's why you don't have they don't have any original copies of what we call the New Testament. They don't have any original copies. They have Greek copies. The Greek copies have been altered to fit Greek culture, because if you look at it, it looks like the Yahudim, the Jews, were the ones who were hating so much Yeshua, as if he was of a different race. Read it, and you get the impression that something here is not quite right. They're telling the story, but they put their own little twist to it. And what happens is, in the course of history, persecutions they came down into Africa through Italy and through Greece and from the Middle East, and they came across into Egypt and into Africa, and they swept across. And so this is an ugly little chart here, but I think it gets the point. Can you see that? We'll banner this. But this is Here they are coming out into Africa from Spain and from Italy and Greece, and from the Middle East. They swept into Africa, and they're doing two things. They're stomping out true worship. And these forces swept across Africa, mostly from north to the west and from east to west. And they took the people out of their lands. And they took those huge amounts of people, whole cities, and they took villages and families, and they swept them, and ones who survived this, they put on ships. And, but I'll tell you what they did with them in a minute. But coming across Africa, these people fought, but they couldn't fight with equal weapons. As time grew on, weapons changed, and all of a sudden now there's firearms, and these people didn't have firearms to fight back with. They robbed the African continent of its people, of its heritage, of its gold, of its diamonds, of all of its wealth. They robbed them, they raped them. And they took these people who already knew who Yahuwah was, who already knew who Yahushua was. They knew him. And they forced them to speak a different language, their children. They taught them a different language, and they took the mother and the father, and they separated them, and they bred them, crossbred them with this group and that group, and they took the children, they shuffled the children around. So by the time those children landed in the new world, they had lost their language, they had lost their culture. The children didn't know who mama was or who daddy was, and the next generation knew less. They weren't taught to read or write. All they were taught was to obey. And so whatever they knew, whatever information they had, what was given to them, and usually given by somebody who, if they were the same color, they were ignorant of their history. So this child that I'm forced to raise is just as ignorant of where they came from as I am. And as generations go by, they lost their language, they lost their true worship, they lost everything. So here we are. Now we've been driven to a new land. In 2018, I don't know 5 people who can say, well, my ancestors lived in such and such a part of Ethiopia, or they lived in such and such part of Ghana, or they lived in here or there in Africa. They don't know. They don't know. I don't know what tribe you're from. You don't know what tribe I'm from. And we're basically ignorant. And we don't know our language. We know the English or the French or the German that we've been raised up with. Here in America, we don't band together. You never notice that? You ever notice that if there's crime committed, it's, for the most part, it's black upon black. Because there's something wrong. Something, we've been robbed of something wonderful, something great that we should possess. There's something wrong. We've lost our way. We're the person who's lost in the woods, and not only do we not know where we're going or where we came from, we're lost because we don't know who we are. The person lost in the woods isn't so much lost if he doesn't know where he came from or where he's going. He's just there in the woods. He's not lost physically. He knows where he's at. He's in the woods. But if he doesn't know who he is, now he's lost. And the discovery of this is what drives me. I have a passion for Yahuwah and for his people. It says, I'll bring you back. When we turn to him, when we look at the Torah, when we walk in those ways, as Yahushua or HaMashiach walked in those ways and showed us how to walk in those ways, and we do this, he looks on us and has compassion. He can't help himself. Therefore, I suggest to you that we look at ourselves and that we speak to ourselves often on these things, that we talk about these things. There's a scripture in Malachi that says that we need to be constantly reminding ourselves, encouraging ourselves in these things, constantly. And he's going to take action on our behalf according to his word. He'll bring us back. Now, the Sabbath's about to begin. And so I need to end this video and go ahead and publish it. My prayer is that this Shabbat, we think deeply about this. We realize where we're at. And that we embrace his Torah and embrace Yahuwah. And that we walk in his ways. Not being concerned about how the world views that. That's not our problem. But our way is to show them in our lives and in our words and in our deeds how to walk according to Torah. How to love Yahuwah with all our heart, our might, our being. The completeness of our lives should be focused on walking in his ways. So, until next time, this is Azariah Ben Yisrael, and I am very grateful that you listen, give me this time. I bless you in the name of Yahuwah HaMashiach, Yahushua HaMashiach, and Yahuwah our Creator. Be blessed.